Excellent. All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for the committee here today and for all the people in the audience. It is appreciated. We are here for the Easton Community Preservation Committee, October 13th, 2022, 7 p.m. meeting. Nice to see everybody live at the auditorium. We appreciate it. I don't have to read the disclaimatory language regarding meeting remote, which is always helpful. So with that, we'll take a roll call just to confirm we have quorum. Ed Hands.
Here.
Al Benson.
Here.
John Ventresco.
Here.
Dennis.
Here.
Greg.
Here.
Tom Broussard's present. Mr. Lee.
Here.
Present. Excellent. So we have quorum. Not attending tonight just for the team's benefit will be Amanda Varela. Unfortunately, she had an issue that detained her at work. And I'm hopeful that Meredith will join us, but we have quorum, so.
Meredith texted she can't make it. She was trying to give me the Zoomer. And
I
can't get it to work for some reason.
Got it. Right, and I don't think we have the hybrid model, so appreciate that update. Strange, timely, perfect. So with that, we have a pretty good agenda tonight. We'll have our normal minutes. We do have a very important update. So we have Wendy Nightingale, the town finance director, joining us and helping us to understand our current status of funding. I think as we all know, we have a plethora of projects that have been put before us for consideration this year. Some of them have a material amount of costs that are associated with them. So I think an understanding of where we are today from a financial picture, and then I'm sure we'll ask some probing questions as to what might happen in the future, Wendy. So appreciate your help in level setting us for that. We do have a budget housekeeping item regarding the special town meeting warrant article regarding the town hall restoration project. We do have draft applications, and so for everybody's, as a reminder, we have two phases. First, we are asking people to submit their letter of interest, at which point we very preliminarily encourage them or not to submit a formal application. So far, we have taken all letter of interest to an application phase. So we'll be looking at the draft applications, and I know in the audience we have David Twombly and Mr. Getchell joining us regarding the high school basketball courts, the high school tennis courts, and the RO school playground. And then we do have one final letter of interest that I believe we have not got to as a team. That would be regarding the Ames Memorial Hall preservation and renovation project. We'll have a brief update regarding the TRC, or the Technical Review Committee at the Ames Memorial Hall, just to speak at a high level of the progress that organization is making. We have a Pond Street Island update, and then if need be, which I do not anticipate, we'd have executive session. So with that, hopefully everybody had an opportunity. We'll dive right in to look at the minutes. I do not believe that it's appropriate to release any previously accepted executive session minutes that have not been released, but I would take a motion to accept and release the regular session minutes from our last meeting of August 11th in 2022.
So moved.
Second.
That's Ed Hands and Jim Lee. Take a vote, and we'll just go around the table. Ed?
Hands, aye.
Benson, aye.
Ventresco, aye.
Sheedy, aye.
Strangel abstaining.
Broussard, aye.
Jim, aye. Lee.
Excellent. So that is unanimous with one abstention. Perfect. And with that, couldn't have given a better preamble and setup for how important the financial update is for Wendy. Really appreciate you coming, Wendy, and taking the time to put together these schedules for us.
Thanks for having me. So I'd just like to begin with, we might as well start with a special town meeting that's coming up in the warrant article. So the warrant article is necessary because in June, after we had the annual town meeting, we did a large bond issue. We bonded basically all of the projects that we were currently working on, and we might have had some short-term financing, or we were going to need funding for like over the course of the next year. And so we did a bond issue in June, which we typically don't do, but we did it with the advice of our financial advisors because they knew that interest rates were only going to be going up and up, which they did over the summer. So it was great that we took advantage of that, and we did a bond issue in June. As a result, one of the things that we did bond for was an incremental amount on the town office restoration project. So that was initially $1,450,000 that was authorized. We bonded $800,000, but if you look at the debt schedule, it actually says $729,100. That's because we were able to get a premium on the bond when we issued them that got applied to the project. So as a result of issuing those bonds, we have debt service that needs to be paid this fiscal year. So it's a principal payment and 2 interest payments. And it's 69,000. $69,948. So one of the things that you can do is you can transfer funding from the annual budgeted reserve. That's in a line item in your budget that we set every year. It basically gives you the opportunity to appropriate CPA funds during the course of the year that you didn't appropriate at the annual town meeting from your estimated revenues. So that you don't lose the ability to spend that money if the need arises during the fiscal year.
And where would we see that balance, Wendy, on our docs?
So that's it would have been like in the budget that got passed at the annual town meeting.
Okay.
It would be in there, that line item. It's 400 and something thousand.
It's in the budget book, right?
It is in the, yes,
Yeah.
it's in the budget.
I'll find it. I won't hold you up.
I don't have that on these reports. But, yes, that will still give you, sorry. That particular line, it is on one of the pages on the slide. $488,017. If you go into this report, this handout, it's on the 3rd page, so you can get into that as I go through this.
Perfect. Yep, I see it. And I think you said there were 3 amounts. Do they total the 66,948?
Yes.
They do.
Yeah.
So
Yep.
the one principal,
yeah,
2
it's just
interest.
the total amount of the debt service.
Got
I
it.
know in the packet that went out to you, that whole schedule is in there, that shows the breakdown every year.
Yep. Perfect. Okay. So would you, do you need us to make a motion to fund from the unreserved, the budgeted reserve balance?
So, I guess what I would ask for you to do is, I think also in the packet was the draft warrant article.
Yep.
That specifies where the funding is coming from and the dollar amount. So if you would vote to recommend that article.
Got it. So Article 8, amending the fiscal year 2023 community preservation budget, just so that the board has the language in their mind, to see if the town will vote to act upon the recommendation of the Community Preservation Committee to amend the fiscal 2023 community preservation budget to appropriate funds for additional debt service in the amount of $69,948 by transfer from the fiscal 2023 annual budgeted reserve, or take any other action relative thereto. It would be submitted by the CPC. By way of explanation, the community preservation budget requires additional funds for debt service related to the Town Hall restoration project, which was bonded in June 2022, subsequent to the annual town meeting. The fiscal 2023 annual budget reserve is a line item within the existing budget established for this purpose. And then there would be the motion. I'm assuming, do we have a current balance on our budgeted reserve? Have we used it for anything so
No,
far?
it hasn't been used for anything. So,
Got it.
yeah, so it's $488,017.
And team, and I'll definitely look to Stephanie and Wayne, are there any items that come up on an annual basis that generally require us to use the $488,000 that are relatively standard in nature?
No,
Yeah,
no,
Okay,
right.
got it. So, I mean, it's about 11% of our reserve. It seems like it's appropriate. We're already 4 months into the year. It doesn't seem like we're burning through it. It doesn't seem like we have too much risk on a go-forward basis of not being able to have enough reserves to cover.
Agreed.
Does anybody else have any questions or thoughts on the matter? Hearing none, I'll definitely take a motion to recommend the language for Article 8, amending the 2023 community preservation budget as written in our packets. It's Lee and Ventresco. And then we'll go around the table, starting with Ed.
Hands, yes.
Benson, yes.
Ventresco, yes.
Sheedy, yes.
Strange eye?
Broussard, aye.
Jim, Lee, aye.
That's unanimous. And thank you so much for helping us understand the ask, and more importantly, thank you so much to the town for doing the bonding. When interest rates were a bit lower, I think as we all know, they've gone up, and it's one of the questions I wanted to ask you on a go-forward basis, how we think that will negatively impact what we are looking to accomplish in terms of projects. So, perfect. So we took care of the housekeeping items. Does it make sense to let you now go through the presentation,
Yes,
if that's good?
It's just, it's a brief presentation, just to kind of give you a sense of where.
I'm sorry, Wendy. Can you talk a little louder? I don't know if it's... Or into the mic. Raise the mic.
Raise the
microphone.
Is the mic on?
I think the mic's just
I thought it
recording.
was over cable.
Yeah, I think it's probably just for recording.
Oh, okay.
So we're gonna ask you to
I'll
project the
all right,
touch.
I'll try to talk louder.
Oh,
Perfect,
that's much
thank you.
better.
Okay. So the first page is really just a sense of where you stand now, what you collected last fiscal year in revenues, and what you've collected since inception. And the revenues are $33,101,434 since 2002, when CPA was first adopted, which is a combination of the surcharge, the state trust fund distributions, some investment income, and also, this also includes almost $1 million to date of interest on the Shovelworks loan, and some of the miscellaneous revenues. And there was also that $510,000, it was a state grant, I think 500,000 of that was for the Governor Ames estate preservation restriction, and 10,000 might have been for cemeteries. So 33 million, that's incredible. Last year, fiscal 22, total revenues of $2,660,933. That's great. And included in that total, $409,396 was just an interest payment alone on the Shovelworks loan. So the Shovelworks loan has an outstanding balance, principal balance of $4,350,000. They accrue interest annually at 3%. And to date, the payments towards the loan have not exceeded what the accumulated interest is. So there's still outstanding principal, but these payments have been increasing and coming in much better and better every year. So I think within the next few years, those payments are going to then start being applied toward the principal.
Please.
Yeah, Wendy, what was the term of the loan? I can't remember.
The term of the loan is, I want to say it's not due until like 30/31.
Yeah, I was gonna say 32.
Yeah, 30 years after the project was put into service.
Thank you.
So, and the principal, could you just remind us of the financial terms of the arrangement? Because I think that might factor in as we think of some projects that I would expect, due to the dollar size, would be financed. This would probably help us understand when cash infusions might come in large amounts. So could you just walk through the financial terms, how much we're talking about, how we might be collecting interest on average each year, and then what the final payment would be?
So, all right, so the agreement was basically we would get a distribution of their cash flow. So the interest would accumulate until the due date. And they would make annual payments that were basically the net result of their cash flow from the project. So, I mean, 1 year we didn't get any distribution. 1 year we got 96,000. The last few years we've been getting payments in a few hundred thousand, 409,000, which was great. We did get a payment in July of about, I think it was about 309,000. So, which is, you know, less than the year before, but still a very good distribution.
Yeah.
Which
And-
definitely exceeds the annual interest that accrues, so at some point that is gonna catch up and we'll start moving on to principal.
And the total principal that's outstanding?
So it's $4,350,000. It was 4.5 million, but it was broken down into that note and then this shorter term promissory note for 150,000, which has been paid off.
Got it. Great. Any questions from the team on the slide? Awesome. So is it safe to say, just in very simple terms, Wendy, that if our town surcharge is 20.2 million and the state trust distribution is 9.2 million, I can use the 9.2 divided by the 20 to get to a 46% average match for every dollar we contribute?
Average, yes, but you want to just know that in some of the earlier years, certainly the surcharge was a lot less, but we were getting higher match percentages.
True.
Until a lot of other communities caught on and, you know, adopted the Community Preservation Act, and so that state trust fund distribution had to then be split between more communities.
Yeah, but it is, as an example of the full life of this entire process, the right percentage to say. So I think it just speaks to the benefit to the residents of the town that this is important because for every $1 we generate and contribute from our surcharge, we're getting roughly 46 cents to support it from the state. So it does enable us to take that dollar and spread it a lot further for a lot more meaningful projects. Appreciate it.
So moving on to the next slide. Now, the next slide is a good representation of really where you're at with financial condition. So your undesignated fund balance at the close of fiscal '22 was $6,260,805. That is, you know, your undesignated. So that's free and clear of any money you've already appropriated that you haven't spent. This is money that will be available for appropriation at your special town meeting or annual town meeting towards your future projects. And if you add in the budgeted reserve, your total that you really, you know, can leverage is $6,748,822, of which we're asking for $69,948 for that additional debt service. So that would still leave you with $6,678,874. I mean,
Material.
that's impressive.
Yep. Excellent. Actually, if I could, so team, just want to give credit to both Al and Stephanie. So we do have the, projects that are on the books that have funds associated with them. I've asked Stephanie to go through and compile a list of all of our projects from two funds. One, and this is where Al got involved, he offered to assist to understand what funds are in projects that are no longer going forward, so we can end those and get those funds back so that they can go in the undesignated fund balance. Secondly, I've asked the team, Stephanie and Wayne, to compile a list of all open projects with a status update, how much we've spent, and how much we expect to spend, so we can understand how we're doing in terms of making progress on projects, but also from a financial perspective. So at some future meeting to come in the near future, I think that would be helpful while we take on more projects for this year to clean up some of the old projects and or just give a general update. So maybe we give an update on projects at our town meeting, not the special town meeting, but the annual town meeting, so that we can just demonstrate our progress. That it's not just about giving the money, but it's about seeing the project all the way through and then closing out those old projects where it will. So thank you to both of you guys for working on that. Sorry.
No, that's a good point, and that actually leads to one of the other handouts, which is basically a listing of what I have for the outstanding projects and what the balances are. It was as of June 30th, so it doesn't include your new ones from this year, but you're not going to be able to close over that. So you can see it's got the annual town meeting or special town meeting, it's got the town meeting date on there, so you can get a sense of how old those projects are.
Perfect. Thank you.
So I just want to wrap up with just where you are with like your outstanding debt too, and what you have debt still to pay on. So what projects? So On the next slide, we've got Dean Street land, so that's got outstanding principal of $385,000. The debt service for this fiscal year is about $103,600, and that's for principal and interest. And 2026, that will be fully paid off. You've got the Chestnut Street land, so that has a balance of $1,450,000. $149,500 will be your debt service this fiscal year, and that will mature in fiscal 2033. Governor Ames estate, so that was a combination of I think we borrowed 500. I think that was like $1 million, and we got like a state grant for $500,000, and we borrowed $500,000. That balance is $100,000, and the debt service is $52,625, and that will be paid off next fiscal year, fiscal 24. Got the Gill property, that's $1,760,000, and $192,388 is the debt service this year. That will be paid off in fiscal 2035. And these bonds that we just issued for town hall, outstanding is $729,100, $69,948, matures in 2037. So there will be another borrowing on this project to bond the remainder of that, which is $650,000. That will be at some point this year. We may even just issue bonds and then bond later. We're going to determine that when we look at all of the needs for the authorized and unissued debt for the town.
So is it fair to, so a couple things. One, it feels like from a debt service perspective, we know in theory we have a principal payment coming back from the shuttle shops of $4 million and change, 4.350 in 2031. Basically by then, by and large, our debt service is cleared off from our current debt projects, which I think is a good thing to point out. Currently, is it fair, Wendy, to summarize that the $568,000 of annual debt service in 2023 is roughly 20% of the revenues that we took in 2022 of 2.7 million, roughly. So a 20% debt service on an operating budget roughly of 2.7 doesn't feel like you're overextended. And we also have some finite terms that are coming due in the next few years.
Right, and I mean, this is, the purpose of community preservation is to, fund projects. So to have debt service be that percentage would not be unusual for this type of fund.
Right. So I think that's important because I know as we think about projects to come that might have higher price tags that require us to look to financing, at least we have kept a very healthy financial picture up to this point. So we have that flexibility and latitude to actually entertain larger projects. So that way we won't be jamming ourselves up with debt service to the exclusion of all other projects. So I guess just a shout out for the fiscal discipline that we've displayed, giving us the latitude to really help the community and look at a large amount of projects, both from small size to large size. So just credit to the committee, I guess, for the flexibility and the community for supporting it. Couple questions, I guess, just general. First of all, if the committee has any questions on the materials.
Wendy, can you tell us, there's a state law that regulates how much a single entity can borrow. Where are we in terms of the state cap for the town?
I don't have that number off the top of my head. I will say that our borrowing, our outstanding debt service has increased significantly since in the last year, just because we've taken on a significant amount of the debt for the Blanche Ames Elementary School, and we've also done some borrowing for the water treatment plant and treatment facilities and the PFAS filtration. So our debt has, we're in the 80 million right now, but I will also say that, a large percentage of that is funded from exempt debt, so it's exempt from limitations of Proposition 2.5, and it's also coming from enterprise user fees also. So in order to calculate that, I would have to go back and look and see. Typically, when you look at like your limits, so you look at it's a percentage of your equalized value. It's like 2.5% of your the value of all the real estate in the town. It's usually a pretty high number. I want to say it's in the 100+ million range. I think there's a number too in the budget book, in the debt section, that speaks to that. But you could still exceed that with debt that is.
The second
Because
part,
it's exempt debt, it's viewed differently.
okay. Is this consolidated in that? The town debt?
Yes, this debt, yeah, that's part
Okay,
of the
thank you.
overall debt of the town.
All right, thank you.
So definitely stretching my engagement on the financial matters that you just asked, Al. Brilliant question. I think what applies is section 10 of chapter 44, speaking to the fact that law, except as otherwise provided by law, city or town shall not authorize indebtedness to an amount exceeding 5% of the equalized valuation of the city or town. You can go in excess of 5, but not in excess of 10 of the equalized valuation. Authorized shall be subject to the approval of members of the Municipal Finance Oversight Board, so FinCom. And I think if I have it right, it is the total valuation of the town, which in 2020 was 3.8 billion at 5%, it's 191 million. So round numbers, I think we'd have to look at how much debt we have now, but it seems like if Wendy's saying we probably have a lot of cap room between
Okay.
where we're at.
Yeah.
Thanks.
And also too, debt is classified as being inside the debt limit or outside the debt limit. And like your water debt is outside of that debt limit, exempt debt is outside of that also.
Good question. I didn't
Thank you.
even realize that. It's helpful. Anything else, team? So the questions I guess I have is a little bit of putting on the forecasting look. So a couple things. One, where do we expect interest rates to, where are they at now? Where were they at perhaps in June for context of how much they've increased? And then can we pay things off early if we wanted to? So can you do that with bonds? Things like that. What's our flexibility?
So with your bonds are typically callable, what they call callable. So you can't pay them down early until a certain point, and that's usually after between like 8 to 10 years. So you basically got to get almost halfway through before you can look at refinancing. We've done that. Our financial advisors are excellent. They're always looking at the market. They're always looking at what we have outstanding and if those rates can be refinanced. We've done that several times. At this point, like these coupon rates they're like 5%. But if you look at when you do a bond issue, there's also a premium involved. So that premium really brings down what the true interest rate is on the borrowing, because you end up taking that premium, you apply it to principal. So now, even though you've got a coupon rate of 5%, well, you're not paying that $800,000 at 5%. It's $729,000
Right.
at 5%. So those higher coupon rates they're good in one point because typically those rates are the types that when interest rates are lower and you're at a point where your debt becomes callable, those would be the ones you'd be looking at to get refinanced.
Got it. So basically, while we find ourselves in a difficult situation now in terms of interest rates overall and the cost of capital, we do have an opportunity window that usually presents itself roughly a third of the way through the life of the loan. Perhaps if it's a 30-year loan, it's 8 to 10 years. So one way to look at any financing we may think of doing at the conclusion of this is that, yes, expensive now, but at least hopefully that only holds for, doesn't hold for the full life of any project.
Right.
Okay. That's helpful. And do you have any understanding of how rates have moved? Like, can you just give the committee a barometer that says, look, interest rates have gone from 2% a year ago to perhaps 5% now.
Yeah, I mean, they've honestly, they've gone up probably at least 2 full points since like 2 years ago. I mean, over the summer, I mean, I know there was one Fed hike of 0.75%.
Sure.
And, they every meeting they've been increasing them. So I think on this last, I don't have that exact number, but on this last bond issue that we did, the net interest cost was anywhere from like 3 point something to 4 point something, even though the coupon rates were like 5. I mean,
Got it.
I'm not sure what the market is doing right now. I just know that it's going to be more
Yeah.
than what we ended up financing in June.
Definitely.
And I'm not sure when we'll probably look at doing more financing, because right now we're just trying to, get through the town meeting, we'll get the tax rate set, we'll be starting the next budget. But then we're gonna be looking, probably around January, we'll be looking at, where do we stand with some of our projects, what the cash flow needs gonna be. Does it make sense to issue bonds or issue bands? Because, I mean, if you're gonna issue a note is shorter term, you're gonna pay lower interest, initially, because it's only for a year.
Fair point. And what's the interest rate on, is a note a band? Is that the same thing?
Yes.
Right,
Yeah, bond
interchangeable.
distribution.
Got it, thank you. That's all I have, team. Any other questions for Wendy? Awesome. I think we'll go through go ahead.
Do you happen to know what the current deposit rate is that places where you put your money? Town funds?
It's low.
1 or 2%, if that?
If that.
Okay.
Yeah, well, we have so like the regular bank accounts are gonna have a much lower rate than some of our other, like, investment type of accounts. Those have a better rate of return, but you're just in basic regular accounts, and, we're lucky to get 2%.
Thank you.
It might be helpful, Wendy, if in your travels you did give us what we were earning on the 6.2 million of the undesignated fund balance, just so we had that as a question, or answer to a question should ever come up, Al. I think that's a fair question. So on the list of projects, this is exactly what the exercise we're doing with Stephanie, Wayne, and Al, that they asked about. I do want to ask that we review each of the projects. I see some that are relatively older, and there may be people in the place of those institutions that are unaware of these funds that are available to them for projects that might not be completed. So just because they're old doesn't mean that they might not hold value. And so if we could just independently assess those before we make any decisions, perhaps I could just have a quick call, Stephanie, Al, and together we can understand what that looks like. Wayne, we appreciate it. Perfect.
Alright. And I know you're gonna be considering some significant projects now for this annual town meeting, so I can certainly run some projections. I've done that in the past. We can get our financial advisors to give some estimated debt schedules with some, assumed rates, and you can see what that would look like and what, how much you would have available going into the future.
That would be fantastic. I was going to ask you for a similar schedule to that. It would be great to have all the requests that we have for this year, all of the potential costs estimated that we have for them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Then we can probably designate which ones we might consider for financing and which ones we would probably consider using our undesignated funds or our income from this year or last. So I think that would be super helpful, and it would help frame for us the long-term picture that we want to paint for the residents when we go to market and encourage or support particular plans that have been submitted, applications. That would be super helpful. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Good to see you, Wendy. Say hi to the team.
Will do.
Next up, so we took care of the budget update, the budget housekeeping item. We have 3 applications. Those 3 applications are the Oliver Ames High School basketball courts, the tennis courts, and the playground. And if I can get my notes handy, we do have in the audience David Twombly, Getchell. Do we have the actual applications?
You should have a copy in your binder that's in front of you.
Is that our binder?
Perfect. So first up,
I don't think that's what he's talking about.
And
tennis and basketball courts. Perfect. Mr. Twombly, if it's okay, I'll give you an intro and read some of the stats and maybe save some of the questions and
Yeah, I'm here to answer questions. Chris is here to answer questions. Unfortunately, Ryan Gordy, our new athletic director, he wasn't available tonight. They have a football game over at Oliver Ames. And Alicia Cabral, our superintendent, she had a previous appointment. So we're here to answer any questions. If you want to get information on that, we can certainly answer the questions. If we don't have the answers, certainly go back and come back to you guys via email through Shane and Stephanie with whatever we don't know.
appreciate it. Thank you both for taking time out of your day to be here. So the first applications for the tennis and basketball courts, Easton Public Schools is the applicant. The contact persons, Dr. Cabral, Mr. Twombly, and Mr. Gordy. We have the mailing address, and I think we all know where it's at. The amount being requested is a TBD, so that's probably one where at some point we'll try to understand if we can get that nailed down. We do have some estimates. Option 1 would be post-tension concrete. It's the same material as the new Frothingham courts. 25 years guaranteed, but the expected lifespan is longer, close to 40, with an estimated cost of $675 for the tennis courts, $525 for the basketball courts. That's $1.2 million if my math is correct. The option 2 would be asphalt. That's the same material as the current courts. It has a materially lower lifespan at 10 to 15 years. The estimated cost for this, though, is also materially lower. It would be $625,000. So for round numbers, just about half the cost. Feels like just about half the time. So that seems to make sense that there's a correlation. It sounds like, and I'll let you ask this question, I'm sure we will, that non-CPA funds and sources are to be determined. Total cost is 1.2 to 6 or 625 for the two. There have been previous CPA funding that's been received regarding projects for the athletic department. For example, the stadium turf in 2019 was $380,000. There were new practice fields at the high school in the amount of $268,000 in 2017. And then back in 2008, Mr. Hands educated me. We began some of our journey with the new playground play structures at RO, which were $142,000 back in the day. This is certainly a recreation funding category. Meredith, our recreation department liaison, is not here, but I know she expressed her support at the previous meeting, if that's a fair assessment. But I do think it would be important for us as we go through the process to get the recreation department's official opinion. Timeline would be a July 2023 start. Estimated completion date is pretty quick by construction standards these days, September 1st of 2023. So July, August, so 2-month project basically. And I'll leave the short project description. That's probably enough, I think, David, for you to kind of lean in and help us understand a little bit of the project. I know we have the letter of interest, but if you could just walk us through the merits of the tennis courts and the basketball courts, that would be helpful from a project.
Yeah, so basically, the tennis courts and basketball courts, that's pretty much used by Oliver Ames High School athletics. So obviously the tennis team. We also have physical education classes that use the tennis courts and the basketball courts. But yeah, so I mean, the recreation department, I've met with them recently. They've had some changes over there. They've added some staff. So I think there's going to be a lot more use by the community on both of those courts. I know that they're looking to expand those programs. One of the things they're looking at is street hockey or floor hockey and several other different activities. As you can tell with some of those photographs, the courts are in really deplorable condition. There are cracks in them. We've spent several $1,000s, I think around $70,000, $75,000 to repair those cracks, probably several years ago. But again, those cracks are starting to reappear now. The last time we met with you, we had originally come in with just the asphalt, but I think through talking with the folks on this committee, I think a good push was put in to do the post-tension. Obviously, that's a lot more money, and as Tom mentioned, that's pretty much double the price. The only thing I would say at this point is that, and I'm sure you're gonna hear this from all the projects, it's really difficult to put a dollar figure on some of this stuff. Some of those figures that we're giving you tonight that Tom rattled off, that's like about a year ago or so. So I mean, stuff has really gone through the roof. So it's really difficult until you actually go out to bid. You're really not going to know the true cost. I mean, you can get a design estimate from an architect or a designer, and they'll give you their best estimate. But going any more than 6 months out on projects right now, it's really difficult. So I know we got a couple of people here that work in the construction industry. I'm sure they could probably tell you the same thing, and some of the folks on this committee probably are involved with construction. But definitely prices are going really up, especially on asphalt. I mean, that's obviously a petroleum type substance. So that's obviously what you pay for gas in your car or to heat your house. So with that, I will stop. And if you have any questions, I'll try to answer.
Appreciate it.
Hey, how you doing? Nice seeing you again.
Can you help me out? In going through some of the old documents for the CPA and other related, I found a reference from 2019 that the school department had put in for a capital allocation for 5 tennis courts to be redone. And the latest note I was able to find on that's coming up for approval and funding the next fiscal year. So I'm wondering why you want to cancel that activity, which has been in play for 4 years, and rely on the CPA. It's for the capital. It was a capital plan.
Yeah, I think that was originally, we talked about going for funding through capital, but for whatever reasons, there was a decision to take that off of the capital, and people thought that it was a better way to get funding was through the CPA, and perhaps we have to go to capital too, depending on.
It's still in there, I think. I think it's still in there.
It's in there, but it hasn't been funded.
Right. It's going to come up for the next fiscal year. Right?
I don't think that's, I think it was taken, I think it was on like the town warrant, we talked about it. Definitely was one of the projects that we were trying to move forward with. And there were several other projects, rooftop units, a whole bunch of stuff. And a lot of that stuff was taken out of the request. We ended up doing just a couple of projects, but that project was taken out. And I think, again, I wasn't part of that discussion. I think Dr. Cabral met with some town folks, but I think the thrust behind that was to try to utilize some of the CPA funds, and if we weren't able to fund it 100%, maybe we try to get some capital funds. Perhaps the school department may have some funds. I mean, you can get funded through multiple sources, but I think from my recollection, that's what happened. Again, I wasn't part of some of those discussions.
It's just on the list, it's not.
Approved?
There's no plan right now to fund it, it's just on the list.
And I think that's fair. I think great question. I think for context, Al, the 2023 capital needs list was identified as 12.2 million, of which I believe we funded 4.9. So I think what we've seen is over time projects get into the immediate year due to the critical need, and that basically 1/3 of them may be up for funding on any given capital year through the traditional capital mechanisms. And then they most likely, because of their critical need, default to the next year when we matriculate through to the following year. So I think to the point, it just reinforces, I think, that it stays on the needs, and it probably becomes the next immediate year, and roughly 1/3 of projects, from a dollar perspective, get funded. Hence the looking, I believe, probably at all alternative source options for funds. But fantastic question. Please, go for it, John.
Yeah, I do. I have a question too. I've had 3 children come through a great school system. All 3 played sports, instrumental in their development and what they do. So I'm 100% myself as a citizen and as a member of this committee for this. And I'm budget conscious also, but not stupid. And so when I say that, I tend to lean towards the more expensive, do it right. Let's not have to worry about this in half the time.
Yeah, we definitely got that message last time.
Okay. My biggest question, and I've addressed this to Wendy before, and I'll continue to do it, I get concerned because our applications every year continue to grow. So we only have so much to go around. We've got more parks. We have a lot of recreation parks on the table, applications coming forward. What I've addressed with Wendy, and you addressed it well the year before, if you recall, is what's going to happen if CPC is not here? Where is the capital funding that can help through school budgets to come into some of this funding so we can also pass it over to another application and another application? I mean, we have a tremendous amount of applications coming forward, and they're unfortunately very large. So I have a concern about that, as I have stated previously. And we're probably in the same position. We don't have any money, and without CPC, these projects can't be done. Is that still correct?
That is still correct. I mean, you know, the town is like almost 90% residential for the tax base. And when you have, you know, a tax base that is, you know, limited growth, limited state aid funding too for schools, you know, we're a minimum aid community. So, you know, for several years, we're only getting $30 extra per student in our Chapter 70 aid. They just increased that to $60 a student, but it's still a very small increase on the Chapter 70 side. When you look at our general fund operating revenue, you've got your taxation, you've got your local receipts, and you've got your state aid. State aid at one point was almost 25% of our revenue, and it's less than 20% now. Taxation every year becomes a larger part of our revenues because nothing else is really keeping pace with that. And so it puts us in a position where you've also got to fund your operations, you've got your fixed costs that are going up, and it doesn't leave a lot of room to fund capital other than issuing debt. And we have a lot of needs in the town, and we can't fund them every year. So that's why when something like this that qualifies for CPA comes along, you know, that's one of the things that we want to do is say, you know, please apply to the Community Preservation Fund to get funding for that, because it's also more likely that it will get funded because it's well, I wouldn't say more likely, I don't want to assume, but there's less, there's just so many more items that request is going to compete with on the capital side.
I get concerned because I've been on this committee for over 20 years, and obviously things have changed quite a bit all over. Everything's getting more and more expensive. How do we handle this when repeatedly you have stated to this committee and into town meeting that there is no real capital funding for any of the departments? And it seems like, and I'm getting, maybe I'm feeling, maybe I'm wrong on this feeling, but we are going to be the wheelhouse to do all this funding for all the departments, whether it be under, and rightfully so, because everything, the majority of the applications, if almost all of them, are fit under CPC funding. I mean, under the rules and regulations that are mandated by the state. But how far can we go? I guess my question is, when there is no funding in the departments to do situations like this, where we need $1 million here or $2 million there, and in the future, very near future, we're going to be needing multi-millions. And we're very healthy, but that can go very quickly too. I get concerned about debt service also.
I mean, we do have our debt service budget in the general fund, you know, it's changing every year. You know, sometimes you have years where you have a significant amount of debt that falls off, so that allows you to take on more debt. But the Community Preservation Fund is it's not gonna take over the capital funding of the town. There are so many other capital items that the town does fund that would never qualify under CPA. Like, DPW, they need hook lifts and you need police cruisers and you need computers. Like, none of that's gonna qualify under CPA.
Correct.
We're looking at the recreational things, historic preservation, anything that falls into the intended purpose of the community preservation fund. And the assets that we're looking to, either restore or create are community assets that the townspeople uses, like the town hall. I mean, so many people use the town hall. So many students and, are gonna be impacted by being able to get funding from the community preservation fund for tennis courts, for the stadium. I don't know of a better way to be able to use community preservation funds that will actually touch directly so many residents of the town.
Please.
So as one of the old timers on this committee, I'll take a bow with the other old timers on here for being conservative a little bit. There's that age-old tug. I understand if I was an administrator for this town, and you look at this nest egg, the town's never have enough money. But my concern is this. Talking about construction earlier, this is the worst time in the last probably 100 years to build anything, and I don't see the uncertainty on the horizon lessening anytime soon. I think the next 2 or 3 years are probably going to be the most tumultuous and stressful period in the history of this country.
If not more.
And so I look, we have, 6.5 million readily available, and we've got, whatever, it sunsets, or daylights, the shovel works in 31 or 32, whatever it is, for 4 million, give or take. And we know, and being an old timer, things may change. Maybe when we first had CPA, I think it's fair to say the reason that this town got so excited was the ability to preserve open space, ensure neighborhood housing, and historical preservation, which is very important to this town. And we've done a good job, and it's indulged us to do things that maybe we couldn't do. But anyways, with that as my opening, my question is, so I'm looking at $1.2 million for post-tension now, but it's not a real number yet because it hasn't gone out to bid, right? And it could be, So if we were, come springtime, or wintertime, when we have to make these decisions, what's the conditions that are out there? I know they're not ideal, but how long could they last? How much lipstick could we? Can you say that anymore? I don't know. But how long can we get away with this to maybe look for a better environment to build these things?
Well, I think we've kind of reached that point where we need to do something probably within the next year or so. I do know there's some tennis courts possibly within the town, but from talking to the athletic director, we definitely need 5 courts. There's usually 5 games going on when there's a tennis match, when all of Ames participates. So, you could kick the can down the road, but it's going to definitely cause some anxiety. But our preference is obviously to do it this summer coming up. But,
Sure.
It's really up to the committee. I totally get it. You got all these different groups that are coming in, trying to get some funding for their projects and think their projects are worthy, which they probably are. And unfortunately, you guys are stuck with making those decisions. They're not easy decisions, but
we welcome those decisions. We're just trying to get all the facts.
Yeah.
So because maybe we do have to take the cheaper alternative. But all the courts and all the basketball courts and tennis are still usable at this time?
They're usable, but as you can see through those photographs,
No, I
there's
understand,
several with
I
cracks. So when the ball, if you're playing a tennis match, and the ball hits one of those cracks, obviously it's not ricochet.
I'd take it a step further though, David, candidly, looking at some of these cracks, and if you haven't seen the pictures, you should, but there is definitely one of them where there's an elevated stanchion pole, concrete base, that's a tripping hazard. So as much as I'm concerned about the ball bouncing oddly, and I'm not saying you weren't emphasizing this, I think that you're on the precipice of a safety concern. That doesn't mean that forces us to solve it. I'm not saying it because of that, but I am saying these pictures to me, if this was my physical plant, I'd be concerned about safety, and that becomes an issue. Ed?
we were talking about kicking the can down the road from here into the future. My question is, why consistently, when it comes to maintenance issues on school athletic facilities, the maintenance seems to be kicked down the can until you get to the point where we have to replace everything?
I don't think we necessarily kick the can down the road. I think we have a excellent DPW that does a lot of work for the school department, maintaining the synthetic field. I know we put some lights in a few years ago. They had to get replaced. I think we do a pretty good job within the town.
How much did we have to pay for the replacement of that field that the school department told us that users' fees would cover?
Yep, I think it was 380
Yeah.
grand to answer your
So-
question. But I would point out in the application, there was some thoughtful conversation regarding repairs. It's on the second page, back bottom paragraph. This cannon has been repaired and resurfaced multiple times and started drying and cracking several years ago. The repairs unfortunately began in year 8 after construction. I think that speaks to how long the secondary option might last, probably informs that. $75,000 has been spent in the past 7 years to patch the cracking. The integrity of the asphalt has continued to deteriorate as water seeps in, expanding, causing further cracks and damage. Crack repairs typically last for roughly 3 years, and it's an accelerated deterioration once they begin to repair. So it sounds like they've reached a point where, and I think the last sentence sums it up, continued investment in patching has been a losing battle, and soon they're approaching unplayable status. So that probably sums up the efforts in what you get from that type of product, given how long they are 15 years old.
I watched the development of the tennis courts down at Frothingham, and if I support any part of this project, I'm going to support the more expensive part, because I
Like
think,
we talked about,
yeah, that makes
Absolutely.
perfect sense. I'd like to see two things. I'd like to see something other than, oh yeah, maybe the school department will throw some money into this. That's, I know, sort of a bad way of taking what you said. And the second thing I'd like to see, because again, I'm a little familiar with the high school. I don't see a lot of recreational use there. So I would like to see the recreation department submit a plan to increase the public use of that, which then makes it less of a school department project and makes it more of a town
I think
project.
you bring up a good point. Like I mentioned earlier, I think the rec department, they've expanded some of their administrators, and they're looking to expand a lot of their programs this coming year. As a matter of fact, I met with a couple of people from the rec department last week, and they were looking at using some of the gym space, not only in this school, but also in the new school, and they're also looking at the outside courts. So they're
That-
definitely looking to expand the program.
That's
whether it's
something
in the summer or
that
whether it's in the
actually
fall.
that actually addresses a little bit of your concern, John. If we have a higher density of use
Absolutely.
of the things we have, then it becomes more valuable. So the school department can't be off on its own anymore. It has to be part of the town.
Yeah, absolutely. I think we've been pretty good working with the town. I think we certainly invite them into our buildings and meetings with the town. And I think we have a good working relationship.
I think though the majority of the town feels it's just a school thing. I think Ed brings up a good point where I've talked to many members of the community, and they think, oh, isn't that just for the high school or whatever? So to Ed's point, I think a better job could be done, and it would maybe ease the pain of the amount of money that's going to be expelled.
No, I agree. I mean, again, kind of beating a dead horse, but we are, in the rec department's looking to expand programs. They do have fast break basketball. I think that's in the summer. There's a summer program that goes on inside the high schools. They also have basketball that they use those courts at night in the summer. So they're definitely trying to expand it. They've talked about doing some pickleball, possibly adding some courts over there.
No, please.
Everybody wants pickleball.
We're putting in 6 courts. That's more than enough.
There's a lot of stuff you can do.
Great.
John?
Yeah, I just had one quick question. Ed kind of reminded me of skin in the game. I've always liked skin in the game. Is there any way the school department can come up with some type of funding? Because we push quite heavily with a lot of the applicants. A perfect example is the library, which is sending in an application where they're cutting it into thirds. And a third of that will be CPA funding, and then the other 2/3 are, their own, what they do. Their own. One is through fundraising, and one is through endowment. But
Yeah, so I think,
I
I'm
haven't
not
seen that
superintendent,
here
so I
at
can't
all.
make commitments on budget stuff, but certainly we want to play nice in the sandbox, and certainly we have funds. If we have funds available, we can put them towards the project, but how many funds we can put towards that, I'm not quite sure. But I think that would be, I think it's good to have, that we should invest in ourselves, just along like with the CPA. So I think it should be a kind of like a team effort where, working with the CPA, working with the schools, working with the town. It could come from multiple fund sources, but yeah, I agree.
first and foremost, it's all about money. It's the town's money. It's the citizens' money. This is a separate tax. For those that don't know, that's on our tax bill. That again has been mandated by the state and by our community. I think it's easier to consume that if we see someone put that skin in the game. It doesn't have to be a large amount. It'd be nice if it could be, but we do understand that everybody's got budget restraints, whether it be within your own home or our community. So we're trying to do our best with everyone, with every application. And so if we ask one applicant for some skin in the game and the other one doesn't seem
I totally get it.
doesn't seem to be as fair.
The other thing that concerns me is not a problem with your project, but given the fact that we're in an inflationary period, are we going to have people from all these projects coming back and say, yeah, you allocated this money and now we're $100,000 short?
Well, that's what Greg said, yeah.
I think that's fair, and probably when we prepare the schedule of the cost of the projects, we should add a column for inflationary pressures. So that way we can have a boundary of buffer, so to speak, for scope creep. I guess in closing, first of all, I just want to say it's a solid application. I appreciate how you did consider the community aspect by interweaving your application with both our existing CPA charter, the Envision Easton Master Plan, the Open Space and Recreation Plan, and I just want to give you credit, as well as the Easton Public Schools Strategic Plan, that you are trying to interweave, I think, what we've all been speaking to, which is, and I know we use the town interchangeably, but I use it as community and the town services, so to speak, in departments, the school department. And I definitely agree that it would be nice if we could do fundraisers to support this project, that we could get the public engaged and make them not only help support, but aware of this asset that we're trying to create. And so I think to your point, if there's more engagement along the way from all departments, it will give us a good value. I will ask, because I think the committee was getting to this point as well, if there was one project that you felt warranted more consideration for post-tension concrete than the other, due to usage, due to size, due to its use as a high school sports team platform, for example, that might just be a consideration that you might want to understand by the time we get to a decision. Because if we lay this all out and we're basically coming back that we can't do 1.2, but we think we can make a meaningful contribution, being prepared to answer that question for us would be helpful.
Yeah, I think when the athletic director, I mean, obviously it's not available tonight for the football game, but yeah, he could certainly tell you. I would assume, I hate to use that word assume, but I would assume it would probably be the tennis courts, because obviously we have varsity tennis games that utilize that, whereas the basketball courts are not having varsity basketball games on there. But certainly we want the recreation department to utilize the courts also. So
Yep.
again, I would kind of defer to the athletic director, but most likely, if you held my feet to the fire right now, I'd probably say that.
We won't do that. I think it's appropriate for you to, because I too would probably be thinking one way, but
Yeah.
appropriate to get alignment.
Yeah.
As you get
Yeah, just very quickly, we also encourage people to phase a project in case funding doesn't become available in 1 year, and that's sort of what Thomas is
Yeah, the only
pushing
thing I would
towards.
caution the committee with is that sometimes when you phase projects, the project cost actually goes up, not just because of the escalation in
Good point.
supplies, but the staging and materials and getting everything ready. So when you have all the workers right there, they're ready to work and they can do the whole entire project. So there's, could go up a little bit. That's
Yeah.
when cost of goods.
Good point.
And then the only other last two comments that I had, one is I noticed that this is really about surface, and I'm not sure that the rest of that particular aspect of the campus is in good shape. So the last thing we want to do is to have a beautiful floor and broken windows and holes in the wall. So if the fencing is something that needs to be considered, I would just, again, I think what we're trying to say is we want to maximize value, and so we don't want to be penny wise and pound foolish. So if the rest of it is in good shape, that's great, but I would entertain understanding how the rest of that particular area is performing so we get the best value.
Yep.
And then Wendy, is a $1.2 million project something that we start to consider financing on? Or how does that work in my mind? Like before, when money was cheap, I would always be thinking financing, but like where does it start to balance in your mind?
I mean, it's definitely a candidate for that, but I think you really need to look at what are all the projects that you're gonna fund. Because, I don't think you wanna borrow for everything, you certainly wanna use some of that funding.
Definitely not
but you don't wanna
advocating
use it
that.
all either.
Yep, just trying to understand where that cutoff begins, but I appreciate
Yeah,
that.
$1 million, definitely, I would not consider it, definitely consider it, but given the size of the fund balance, if everything else was gonna be borrowed, then I could say, yeah, maybe the 1.2 million, you just fund that out of your fund balance, and everything else you borrow. It all depends on, what else is
Like the
maybe
market
size of the
basket.
other projects.
Got it. Is that all? Any other questions? We're good?
All right,
David,
thanks a
thank
lot,
you.
everybody.
Good.
Can I
Thank you.
stay here for Chris?
Yeah,
Chris
of
will probably
course.
take the ball most of it, but try to fill in some of the blanks too.
So next up, speaking of the next request, Easton Public Schools, project names the RO Playground Rehabilitation Project. Non-CPA fund sources, again, appreciate the thoughtfulness here. ARPA funds or American Rescue Plan MBDA funds are zero, are TB determined, so we're trying. ESSER funds of $200,000. I'm assuming that's Easton School System. What's ESSER?
It's a state grant.
Oh, state grant, got it. ROPTA, so again, like to see multiple organizations stepping up to fund, is looking at funding $35,000, and there is a direct donation that's planned that we hopefully would raise and contribute. The total project cost is currently to be determined. Is there any cost structure? So we talked about the turf, the fields, the playground structures, previous spend. Estimated start date would be July 1st. Completion would be October 1st. I guess, Chris, I'll let you give us a very quick update on the brief project description. I know we've already heard the letter of interest, but just in case anything has changed.
No, I mean, I'm behind RO, playgrounds in desperate need of repair. Very little green space. We're certainly grateful for the structures that CPA helped fund back in 2008. So built every day at the time. We continue to maintain those, repair those. But I think, with our students, there's an opportunity here with coming plan changes coming on, and those students moving from plan change to RO. I think our campus and the school system is on the verge of becoming a state-of-the-art school campus. It's something that I think would be an enormous source of pride for our town, to have all of our town students in one space and have all of our buildings in a phenomenal conditions that they're in. I think one of the sore spots of this campus is the RO, the back of RO. It's also one part of our school that is still divided. We've worked very hard over the last decade to unite the school. It is very much united, something we're very proud of, but the way the building was designed, the two back play spaces are divided. We also share the space with the middle school. So this is not just about the RO school, it's really about the middle school and the whole campus and the whole town. I certainly hear the point of, the effort needs to be made by the school department to connect with the town and make our campus something that the whole community enjoys and feels ownership of and feels like they can take their kids there on the weekends or use the facilities, the outdoor facilities anytime. So in the design of the back of RO, we are very much of that in mind. So we're thinking of, what is functional and safe for students that might be there or town students that might be there on off school hours. So, I think with Blanche Ames coming on, and we just have this enormous opportunity to really unite the campus, and that's a sore spot in my opinion. And it's, it certainly would be a shock to our students moving from there to our school and to have that as an outdoor space. There's a tremendous amount of potential back there. It's a big space. We want to connect it to the Clifford Grant Conservation Area, not physically, but that is another wonderful space of the town. We're working on getting our kids outside, connecting to the natural world more. And there's a lot we want to do with not just play space, but outdoor classrooms and outdoor education, connecting it, to the proud history of our town. And we worked hard on the, if you look at the application for Project 2, connect this project to things that speak to Easton, not just the school system, like the Envision Easton Master Plan, the CPA Plan, Open Space and Recreation Plan. We took time to read those thoroughly and connect this project to make sure that, we realize this could be a significant amount of funding. We want to make sure that it's fully in line with everything that you guys are all about, CPA, as well as the whole town. I also will say, our kids really took a blow to their development this last couple of years during the pandemic. When you're growing up and your brain is developing from kindergarten through grade 5, there's so much development that happens socially that if you're not interacting with people during that time, you're losing. We're seeing that in our kids in spades. And so outdoor play, and providing safe spaces where kids can play and work together, I think is a vital need right now, just our kids. To your point earlier, we have 760 students right now that we use the space every day. It's a lot of people using that space, not to mention the use of the town. So we feel like we are respectful that it will be a hefty price tag, but I feel like a tremendous amount of citizens in this town benefit from that on a daily basis. I think there's a lot of value here. It really meets a great need of our kids right now.
Appreciate that. Thank you. That was an excellent summary. Committee, any questions? Please.
Just two quick questions, and I breezed through this, but so the play structure that we funded in 08, is that going to remain or is that coming down? And secondly, I know you were funding the design from the folks that did the Blanche Ames. So I'm assuming there must be some ballpark numbers, parameters discussed. I'm wondering, so that we can start to digest this, is there any idea of what you're budgeting to spend on this? Because my concern is we get this 3 months from now, and we have 2 weeks to figure it out.
We did fund the design process, and that is underway. We have reached out to all stakeholders in our school community for input meetings. We have one scheduled this Friday again. So we're still very much in the design phase, getting input for as many people as we can. So that is one of the reasons why we don't have hard numbers right now. We haven't even fully conceptualized the design.
Okay.
When can you
And the existing,
get,
so the one funded in 08, is that remaining or
Yes.
coming out? Staying.
Well, I would like it to stay, but we're still designing that. We have a bid to make repairs right now on the current, and because it's the only play structure at our school, it's heavily used. So it's been that way for many years.
Yeah, I just wanted to add one other thing. So basically, I think from looking at our timeline that we got from Traverse Landscaping, who works with Perkins Eastman, who's the designer or architect on the Blanche Ames project, talking to them, they would have they might have some preliminary design numbers, like maybe in December, like beginning of December. But again, I kind of caution that. I really feel strongly, based on the environment that we're in now, the plan is to go out to bid in January. I really feel like you need hard numbers because things are changing so quickly. And so, all you have to do is go to the grocery store and see that. So.
Right, but in any design, regardless of what you're designing, usually there's you're ballparking because nobody, whether you're a municipality or a private entity, you don't have unlimited funds. So you sort of target, hey, we're looking for X dollars. So that was the reason.
Yeah, so you're absolutely right. So
maybe you could,
so in December we would most likely have a very preliminary rough number based on the design. We would not have gone out to bid at that point.
Could I ask though, just following up on Greg, if we talking $100,000 project, a $500,000 project, $1 million project, a $3 million project, are we even we have to have one of those. It's not $100,000.
I think it's more than 100,000.
Probably not 3 million,
so far.
right?
So everybody has all
But
the wishes.
is it like a 7-figure that you're thinking?
I think it's probably in this, probably the mid to high sixes, maybe.
Okay. And I'm not holding you to it. I
I have no
absolutely
idea.
appreciate everything you said, but it helps us at least. Candidly, if it was 5 million, we'd probably say not going to be easy for us. Let's talk more. But so 600 helps us
Maybe
understand
it'd
the
be a little bit
ballpark.
higher. I would probably lean towards the higher number.
Yep, that's okay. Look, 6 to 1.
Yep.
That's okay. It helps us at least think.
Yeah, just because the reason for my question, I'm not trying to be hard.
It'll be
And I understand
$700,000.
what you have to do.
It'll
But
be
think of it, so it's going out
$700,000
to
by
bid
the
in
time this
January,
is
so
done.
maybe we have
Yeah.
to wrap up our work in February, right? So we take our job serious, and so all of a sudden, we get numbers on a Friday, and we have to decide the following Thursday. That's really hard. It's really stressful, and I don't think we do our best work that way. So. And I guess I'm trying to communicate back that I understand. You said a second ago, we have all these people that have these ideas. We don't. I just don't. Suddenly, the CPA has been discovered by everybody in town, and certainly everybody in the school, it seems. And that's great. We all understand. My grandson is in Hong Kong, and he's 19 months old. And wow, the facilities they have at their school, fantastic. But we don't have Hong Kong money here in Easton, and we have a lot of big asks this year, and I'm assuming they're just going to keep coming down the pike. And we've worked so hard. The reason we have that 6.6 or whatever, and that 4, is because we've worked hard at that. Because the asks aren't going to get any easier. And 10 years from now, the residents are going to be just as important as the residents now. And so we need, we want to continue to grow and evolve as a community. So I want to make sure we make the best decisions we can so that we can continue. Because if we go and blow everything now, and who knows what's going to happen with bond rates the next few years? Because
Exactly.
That's the reason for my question.
So Chris was just mentioning to me, so we have another design development meeting with the architect, but that's next Friday. When we meet with her next Friday, we can try to kind of pressure her a little bit to try to give us a number a little bit earlier than what she had told us originally. Again, she told us in December she'd probably have a rough number, but again, that would not have been out the bid at that point.
Good point. If you can accelerate the process, I think it helps us all out. And you, again, I think actually, I'll let the rest of the committee with comments. John, did you have any?
No, just that both of you did a great presentation, both severely needed. I think you've seen some of our points, at least some of my points, if you could write that down. And to everyone's points that had stated, if you can expedite it, it's a huge help to us, to Greg's point, because it is a difficult job, and we're dealing with taxpayers, our money, and we know it's tight. And these are all great things, and not one of them is a bad one, and we just have to be diligent about how we handle it.
I just want to commend this particular proposal on the fact that there's multiple funding sources, the skin in the game that John was talking about, and that's a real plus. The other thing is I'd like to bring up another project. Has anybody, a few years ago, a private citizen put a walking trail around the high school part of the campus. Has anyone come forward with a way, as you mentioned, to link the campus together and link it with the KIPP grant? That might be something for those people over there to think about.
Anybody else? I guess I'd close, first of all, thank you again for your time. Thank you for your passion for what you do in terms of the schools and the children in this community. I do want to digress just for a little bit. Dr. Cabral will absolutely tell me I butchered this, but there was something that was mentioned earlier that's really important, and I'm not sure everybody understands it in our town, and perhaps not in this community, but Chapter 770 funding is very different for the town of Easton as compared to some other communities that are near us, and you've heard about the minimum aid. And I just want to add context to that statement. So for 2022, we had 3,345 enrolled in Easton, according to this stat downloaded from the state of Massachusetts. We received $10.4 million of Chapter 70 aid for $3,124 per pupil. That's 274th out of 372. And for context, and I appreciate that these communities and cities and towns have different challenges, but for context, there are communities such as Lawrence, there are communities such as Holyoke and Chelsea that get $15,000, $16,000, $19,000 per student. So we are dramatically lower, and that just happens to be, if I remember correctly, the geography of where the line was drawn, that we happen to be on one side, grouped with Foxborough and Mansfield. I'm looking as I'm speaking so that I don't step, and not grouped with other communities like Brockton that might be near us.
That's correct.
Brockton specifically, just for reference, receives $13,199 per pupil to our $3,124. So there are some inherent structural funding deficits that exist both within the town, but certainly in the school system as a result of some of the machinery that exists in our society. I just thought that might add some color. So Brockton gets, for example, $244 million of aid, whereas Easton gets 10.4.
The good news is, Tom, that number 272 out of 300 is better than it has been. It's slowly creeping up year by year. So we need more political action on that. Otherwise, we're not ever going to get a fair distribution.
Fair point. So hopefully that brings the millions of dollars difference that can exist for our town. Appreciative of the school system for making do with what we do have. And really, the last thing I'd end on is value. I think that one of the aspects that I've appreciated is that the Blanche Ames School has been a magnet for people with kids that will be able to enjoy that school. So that has people moving into our bedroom community that helps prop up and support housing values. And we have a community that's highly desirable. And the last point I'd just say is I personally appreciate the interconnectedness regarding getting outdoors. I think the town of Easton is a strong supporter of green space and helping connect our children with the green spaces that we have. And the outdoors, I think, is brilliant. And outdoor education, I think we've learned from the Blaine Champs project, or at least I have, of how important that is critical. So again, a well thought out application. Appreciate you getting other people involved for funding. And I look forward to figuring out ways that we can help support it. I will say, to the point the committee has made about funding, you might want to think about all three of these so that when you're thinking if it becomes a finite pool of dollars, what would get prioritized by the school system. I think we have our own opinions here. I would deeply value how the school system prioritizes the three projects. It would be great for us to support all three in the best way possible. But if we get to the end and we're running out of time, having a lot of this pre-thought done will enable us to act quicker, and we'll appreciate at least how you prioritize it. That would inform us. Anybody else? Awesome. Again, thank you for your time. It's a long day. It's
Thank you.
8:30, so appreciate what you did.
What's the next steps, just out of curiosity? Will you get back to us? And
Yep.
if you guys want more information from us, how's all that?
So we've got a draft application. It helps inform us after the letter of interest. It gives the public the opportunity to come and opine, so that's great. We'll have a final application where we'll either vote to recommend or not. So there's probably one major meeting that's left. The other things that would be helpful is, again, outreach on your side, getting support, community engagement. The more people that show up and help us appreciate that they're involved and support what you're trying to accomplish, the better. I think you saw that with the pickleball courts, where every meeting, 5 to 10 people would show up or more, and that impresses us. That helps us very clearly see what the community is demanding. So that would be fantastic.
Great, thanks.
But does anybody, I don't know if this is right, but if you have a design meeting, is it appropriate that the public attends that? Does that happen?
I think there's a problem. I mean, next Friday we have a meeting, so for anybody on the committee, I'll send an email to Wayne and let him know the time. I think it's a Zoom actually meeting.
Great.
They don't have to come in physically, so.
Send it to Stephanie, I know.
Okay, I'll send it to you.
So I think on our end, right, we say if you have the opportunity to engage and you don't, that says something. So
Yep.
at least we're getting an opportunity to engage. If anybody has the time, and Stephanie, if you could make sure Meredith knows about that opportunity from the recreation department aspect, that would be
I
helpful.
think Meredith actually was already invited.
Perfect. So we could have representation already.
Yep.
Thank you guys.
Okay, thanks a lot, appreciate it.
Awesome. Stay dry.
Yeah, I know.
So next up, we have, and thank you for the audience for waiting patiently on a long day. We do have the next step, which is the letter of interest. This is the discussion to vote
Do you see
to
an
invite
audience out
a
there?
draft
I'm sorry,
application
listen, do you see an
regarding
audience
the
out
Oaks
there?
Ames Memorial Hall preservation and renovation project. This is by way of update on the technical review committee. So there is a technical review committee. Greg and I participate. Ed arrived as well to talk about the historical perspective that we have. We have Lynn Spencer in the audience, Fred Ames, and Suzanne Bonflo, the trustees. Need no introduction, Mr. Ames. So we appreciate you joining us tonight. This is a very high-level part of the process. As you see, when we get to the draft application, we'll probably have a lot more questions for you. I think as a committee, we're all pretty aware of what's at stake, what's going on. By way of update, and Lynn, I may lean on you a little bit, and Greg, I may lean on you, but there are some repairs that are going on that are making some incredible progress. I think I saw posted on Facebook the lintel supports. Did I say that right? I feel like I'm saying a vegetable in a soup, but it's lintel, not lentil, right? Correct?
Yes.
Got me. All right. And so it's great to see those going up. But just a tremendous amount of work has been going on. It sounds like we're either in this month, getting close to when we may be able to open back up and hold events. So just an update on the repairs for the benefit of the committee, Lynn.
Sure, happy to do that. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Good?
Yep.
You hear the rain outside? Okay.
Yeah.
So, thanks, Tom, and thank you, committee, for your support. So, as Tom mentioned, we are in the midst of, we're probably at the 3/4 of the way mark on the that hold up that massive big roof. They had actually gone into partial collapse. And what Tom was also mentioning is those trusses, which are, big 12 by 12 wood trusses, come down in the middle of the windows. And so what did the structural engineers conclude? In addition to reinforcing the trusses themselves, we are actually also reinforcing the historic window lintels. Now, H.H. Richardson was a brilliant architect, and he actually worked with very wonderful builders. But the understanding of structure and longevity, I suppose, has advanced. And so what Richardson and his builders installed as iron lintels are quite honestly inadequate to the task. So more steel has gone into that building. We've got an excellent crew who's been working diligently now for 4 months. We've got plasterers getting started on Monday for repairs to sort of repair the openings made in the plasterboard for this room. And then there'll be in-painting of the plasterboard. All to get the hall back in track for the first event on November 5th.
Excellent.
So, yes, it's been a long process. Fred and the association, Suzanne, have been very patient with what quite honestly has been a very disrupted schedule. After 2 years of COVID and being closed down to open again, and then to lose the opportunity of these months of events and functions, it's been a hard blow. But community preservation, along with the funds that have been raised by the association, a $50,000 Massachusetts Preservation Fund Projects Funding emergency grant, a state appropriation of $50,000, and then over $40,000 raised in private funds has eased some of this and has made this very important work possible.
Well said. Excellent. Any questions on the repairs? great to hear the progress. Honestly, great for sticking with it, Fred, team. Layden, honestly, it's, I know you found some new things, but it sounds like it was the right time to deal with them and get them addressed.
You know, I'm in Easton every Thursday, so anytime anyone wants to come by and take a look at it, and I'm privileged to also be working on the town offices project, so, yeah.
Well, appreciate the invite. John?
Just a quick comment, Fred. In the last 2 or 3 years, you've done a great job publicizing what's been going on. I see it on Facebook. I see these little videos, pictures, newsletters. You're informing the public where it really wasn't done before. And it's being noticed. So I think you did a good job. Your team's doing a good job with it.
Yes, and we've really seen payoff. That's what it is. The market increase, inquiries and bookings, and then of course, this crisis you came on, which was really crushing. And we're still getting a lot of inquiries for where we open. So yeah, it's social media push has paid off. And we also have very good, as you know, proactive rental agent. And so we're gaining speed, so we can't wait to open.
Good. Any other questions or comments on the repairs? Excellent, thank you, Lynn. So by way of the letter of interest, again, this is the high level. Just as a recap, the estimated budget that's listed is 8 to 10 million, making the CPA funds that's requested 8 to 10 million. I think this is one of the projects that reinforces the importance of understanding our financial health, condition, and debt service. The matching funds, there are a few, which is excellent. Mass Cultural Facilities Fund is listed as $200,000, the Mass Preservation Projects Fund of $50,000, and private foundations of $250,000. So that's a $500,000 contribution from other sources, which is good, quote unquote, skin in the game. I think we all know the details of the ask. Obviously referencing ongoing volatility in construction costs, comprehensive scope, so on and so forth. So I think we appreciate that this really is the opportunity, given this amount of funding, to support the hall, to take it to the next, I think we call it the next generation, the next century, so to speak. It is a gem in Easton. I think we all can speak pretty confidently to that. It is a critical component in the fabric of who we are. As a matter of fact, it shows up when you Google it. So I think if that's what happens, that just says yet another thing about what the world knows that we all in Easton know and appreciate as well. Certainly this is about modernization, it's about HVAC, it's about elevators, it's about access. And by way of update on the TRC committee, which we won't get into the details here, I'll give you the top level though. There are just some incredibly great and rich conversations that are going on for the detailed, I call it the technical level, of the campus style, of where traffic patterns come and go in terms of how the facility gets used. And I just would say and argue it's really designed to ensure the maximization of that facility for the benefit of the community and to help that organization become self-sustaining on a go-forward basis by hosting larger events, by connecting the campuses together to really enhance that opportunity, creating synergies with the other entities that are around there. So just credit for that at a high level. I would expect on the draft application, on the next phase, assuming this committee sees fit to approve the letter of interest and take it to the next level, that would be the forum where we would get into more of a detail, where I would expect us to have schematics and plans and details, and I would expect us to probably publicize that weeks in advance so that the community and town residents can begin to see in greater detail what the technical review committee has been working on, what the applicant desires and is looking to accomplish, and what the CPC is trying to convey. So hopefully that's a good summary on an update. Does anyone feel confident? We appreciate the letter of interest, and we would invite the applicant to submit a draft application. If so, I'll take a motion. Go ahead.
Just a quick question. So you and Brett, who's meeting? Just you?
So Greg and I
Greg?
meet with Lynn and Fred, and Suzanne has shown. We also meet with the select board, Chair Dottie represents, and the town, Connor attends, and Stephanie attends as well. And so what it is to create alignment amongst all of the different parties on the plans so that when the draft application comes before each of our respective bodies, so for the CPC, it's already had some thought that goes with it and some alignment that's been created as a part of that dialogue. So that way such a large application will be more enriched by having all of the different departments along the journey at the same time.
So all of this will come to the forefront at our next meeting, or is this going to be an executive session? Or is this going to be public?
It would be a public discussion about the draft application, just like we had with the schools. So it wouldn't be we would vote on it at the next
Okay.
meeting, but we would begin what I would call the next step of the information informing process. So I think the CPC would be enriched with a very long and lengthy dialogue, because there's a lot of detail. I think we've been able to probably shape and hone it with that TRC so that it isn't too much of a volume. And importantly, we are bringing all of the different silos that could happen along the same journey. So that way, what the message that the select board hears is similar to the message that we hear, which is similar to the message that the town is hearing from an employee perspective and services and task. So it's probably a much more robust and different process than the run-of-the-mill normal because of the size of the ask. For context, we had an entire capital budget as a town for $4 million last year. This single project is doubling that,
If not
from
more.
if not more, from a CPC perspective. I think it's prudent. I certainly believe in the process. I think it's prudent to bring the rest of the stakeholders along the journey, because if any of those stakeholders aren't demonstrating the support of this project, candidly, it might not be appropriate for us to carry forward as a town. It's that big. I think to the price point that we've talked about earlier, that this will absolutely have a material impact for years to come on the CPC budget, should we all vote and the town residents vote to support it.
I mean, the only thing I can think come close to that is probably shovel shop.
It is, and the process that is unfolding now is very similar to that. Remember in the old days, we couldn't get more than 3 people from the historical commission to meet, otherwise there's restrictions. That's why there's 2 people from the CPA, not all of us, and that kind of stuff. So it's well structured.
Like a subcommittee, I
Yeah.
think that we should entertain, and I'll ask us and I'll challenge our team to think differently about this as well. So for example, we may want to entertain listening sessions. We may want to engage the town residents earlier rather than later. So that way, when we get to town meeting, there's already a base of understanding of the project that exists, and there's an understanding of the support of the residents for this large project. I think that we'll find that they're receptive to it, that they appreciate the value of the institution that has played such a role in the fabric of Easton. But I think we have to do our job to ensure they appreciate the value equation. It's a big number, and the finance guy in front of me, in my mind, not in front of me, the finance guy in me wants to appreciate the ROI and what that looks like. And I know a lot of that is subjective and not calculable, but I think we all appreciate the size of this project. I know, Greg, you're thinking in the back of your mind, if we had done it 5 years ago, it would have been cheaper.
Damn right.
I know. Al?
Is there any way that we could share this large project with the town financing? There's a benefit to the town on this, so.
I don't think the town can support a private institution.
Now, going to what I said earlier,
They can't do it?
Right.
they couldn't
right.
do 50,000. I don't think they could do 10.
No, I didn't know.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Good question. I think they certainly value and have a stake in it, and they're active and engaging and supportive and helpful for asks that come along the way. And I know that there is consideration for the contribution of land at a nominal price to help support some of the aspects of the project. So I think in the ways that are appropriate for the town engaged, they're doing so, and that they continue to look for more ways to be helpful and supportive.
Okay, thank you.
Good question. Right?
Yeah, do you mind?
You breathed in. I thought you were going to go out.
So, I think it's important to remember, why is this being done? Okay, first there's a building code issue. Okay, that almost we're just at the tipping point when you spend a certain amount of the value of a building, then you have to bring it up to code. And, many times, Ed and other folks at Historical have pointed out, we kind of went right up the road. We're blessed. It's a blessing and a curse having all these buildings. So the Unitarian Church, remember that was done a decade or so ago. And then the library. Now it's this building. The microenvironments that have eaten away at the brownstone, the slate, the tile roof. And Fred doesn't like when I say this, but that building sort of has always been a bit of a white elephant. But so we've piggybacked. So we need to spend a big chunk just to bring this whole building up to code: electrical, mechanical, accessibility. Needs a parking lot. I've been barking about that for years. And look at that fantastic job that's happened to the library in the last decade. So we have the largest collection of Richardson buildings in the world. And more finally, we've been talking about this in historical, but now I'm hearing this from the administrator, I'm hearing this from the politicians in town, talking about historical, help me.
Assets?
Tourism, thank you.
Oh, yeah, there you go.
That's really what we need to focus on this town. We have sewer, little pocket sewer treatment plant. So we've been underserved by restaurants for years. Look at all our abutting communities. We're the only one that doesn't have highway access. So people always call me and say, why don't we need an Amazon warehouse? Where's it going? And we're not on the algorithm. We're never going to get it. Not that we would want that anyways. But so we need to really channel our resources, and we're going to remain, Wendy said it earlier, we're always going to be a majority residential tax base. We need to keep our property value up. That doesn't mean we can't do diversified housing types and all, but we need to keep the shine on the jewel that we have. So look, the naysayers a decade ago when David Colton started working along with the Ames family on the shovel works. Look at the transition that's done downtown. And when this hall is done, and wait till you see it's not even a parking lot out back. It's a piece of art. Wait till and the amenities that are going to be there. It's going to really unify that campus. They're shooting a movie another TV show. I mean, and so we need to continue to harness these. So you talked about the town doing this hall. First, it has to be done, and it will continue to increase our property value. It'll continue to keep Easton unique, and it will pay off, in the tax base and in the property values and in the amenities in town, and it'll continue to draw. There's some big things on the horizon downtown, and another 10 years from now, we will have a shining jewel on not the South Shore, but just south of Boston. We just need to continue to work at it. So it's a painful ask, it's a big ask, but as I said earlier, that's why, that's what's beautiful about CPA, is it didn't do, and we're lucky that we have it, so that it doesn't put a strain. Early the chapter, I believe the chapter 70 funds, which I say, get our politicians going. That line needs to change. So anyways, that's my say.
So tonight isn't a vote on details or the application itself. Is literally just for accepting the letter of interest and encouraging a draft application to be submitted. Ed, do you want to make a comment before I ask for a motion?
No, I've been on the edge of this process because I get called in every once in a while, and I agree with Greg 100%. This is going to be an amazing project. Costs have gone up, so it's not quite the same scale as the Shovel Shop project, but it's a dramatic change for Northeastern, and the stuff that I've been involved in, the parking lot melding with the library, absolutely going to be fantastic. So.
If there's no further commentary, then Ed, I'll take a motion from you in your support if you'd like.
Yes, I support in a general way the project. More details to follow.
So, and Greg, you want to second it?
Honorary second.
Perfect. We'll go around the table. Ed?
Yes.
Al?
Yes.
Jessica, yes.
Sheedy, aye.
Strange eye.
Broussard, aye? Excellent. So, thank you all. We look forward to getting your next phase, this draft application submitted. I would challenge this committee This ask that we will go before the residents of our town is certainly the largest, as we've talked about, and I think it's critical for the success, for all the reasons that you all spoke about, to the value of what Easton is. I would ask you what is important for you to incorporate in the process as we go through, so that you too can feel 100% with conviction when if we vote to support this application, that you feel it will be executed well, that you feel it will be successful, that you feel that we have the right detail necessary to drive accountability and transparency to get the project of what we want and envision. So I know, Ed, for example, you spoke well about how you know it will be a crown jewel. I would look forward to hearing in detail what that means to you.
Sure.
Because I would like to bake that in as requirements. Because if we all align around that, then we are basically identifying and outlining what we expect to get and receive by recommending and funding $8 to $10 million project. Does that make sense? I might not really care too much about the composition of the asphalt for a base basketball court. I'm going to assume it's asphalt. But if it was a $10 million basketball court, I'd want to know where the rock was quarried. And I want to know what type of asphalt mix we put into it, when it was made, how it was made, so that I feel confident for an investment of this size that we will absolutely give the residents of our community the value. And that way, what you're really not doing is you're not selling a project. You're actually just communicating the inherent value that exists. I'm confident we'll get there. I'll just challenge this committee, though, to think long and hard about what we want to make sure we have in place in terms of requirements, expectations, timelines, things like that. I'm probably preaching to the choir, but this is a whole different ballpark than the run-of-the-mill fix the playground, which is equally important, but I think you get what I'm trying to do. Does that make sense? Perfect. Awesome. All right. Thank you all so much for coming. I know it's a long night and a long day. Lynn, appreciate it. It is a Thursday, so at least you didn't have to travel back and forth to town. And Suzanne and Fred, thank you both so much for coming. I appreciate it. Next up, for our line of business, Pond Street Island update. I think, is that you?
Well, we put it on here. I don't know if Greg has an
do you have an update?
update.
Sure. The longest process to come up with a memorandum of understanding is still ongoing. So quickly, so David Santomena, who is the point for Senate Trustees of Reservation, will be leaving. I think next Thursday is his last day. And I have a conference call on Monday with his replacement, whose name escapes me at this point, forgive me. But I know it is an individual who has been with TTOR since I think March or April and is familiar with the project. So we're just gonna, and there's no sticking point. It's just a matter of getting some details that the Ames family wanted, and trustees of Renovation. They've just been working on some things. I don't want to speak out of school, but it's at the lawyers, and I have a call scheduled with David Ames tomorrow, at which Fred acts surprised. So at which time I plan to try to impose a deadline. So let's move this thing along, because we know preservation restrictions after this are,
The audience would like to speak.
I guess Greg has got it absolutely spot on. I can say freely that that's exactly the situation. There are no issues. It's just a matter of a very busy lawyer doing it and expediting it, and Greg is consistent and gracious at the same time.
Right. I've been patient, but now that I'm back from Italy, only bad things happen when things linger. So it's time to, I want to get this wrapped up by the end of the year.
Excellent. Appreciate your continued effort, Greg. All right. No items reasonably anticipated. No reason to go into executive session at this time. So with that, I'll take a motion to close the meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Second by Ed. Round the table. Hands?
Aye.
Aye.
Francesco, aye?
Sheedy, aye.
Strange eye.
Broussard, aye. Meeting's adjourned.
Who's going to get my car?
You.
Been ready on this.
I have a question.
Slow it down.
My